Awesome. As always, hello everyone. Welcome to the July 8th, 2025 New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association meeting. My name is Ashley Lynn Qua, and for everybody tuning in and listening asynchronously sometime in the future, thanks for tuning in today. You will notice I am not Stan. Uh, I have taken over today's meeting, and we're going to go a little bit different than what we normally do. And we're going to have a pretty cool series of agenda items today. But really quick, if this is your first time tuning in, I'm always going to put up the obligatory about the EVA slide, about what our mission is, who we are, and the fact that we're a 501c3. So basically, we're all volunteers. We do this out of the goodness of our hearts, but also because we think that EVs are pretty awesome. So as always, if you're interested in learning more about us, feel free to go to myeva.org. Really quick, a very big thank you to our sponsors. As always, our DCFC sponsor, Genesco Sports Enterprises, and our level 2 sponsors, Siaka Chevrolet of Princeton and Signature Detailing of New Jersey. Thank you, as always, for supporting the NJEVA. Before I go any further, if you are listening and you are an NJEVA member and you haven't made it official, yes, I mean put a ring on it, join us for official purposes, and you haven't done so already, we really want you to actually join us as an official member so that way we can actually count how many of you there are. Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last time that we checked, we were like 55 to 60 folks
That
that were
sounds
officially
about right.
registered with us.
Yep,
Say that again.
that sounds right.
Okay. Yeah, we got like 55 to 60 of you out there. And yet somehow we have like 800 of you on our mailing list. We have over like 300 to 500 on our Facebook group. And we have a whole host of you that are out there that show up to our EV shows and our ride and drives and to all of our other awesome events. And we love seeing your faces. We love the fact that you're so involved. But every single dollar counts. As every good person will have to eventually say. And so I will say, I would very much so love for us to make it official. So I will put this at the front of the PowerPoint today, that the National Electric Vehicle Association is trying to make sure that we count every single member that's showing up and making sure that we can get all of your membership dollars because we do get revenue share. And all of those dollars allow us to do more for you, allow us to show up more, do more events, and do more in the future. And so to that end, if you go to myeva.org, you go to join, it'll give you a little click button that says sign up today or find a chapter. And then from there, it'll get another box. The website's going to give you a series of steps. I promise it's less than 15 minutes, even though the website looks a little crazy, not a terrible amount. Basic membership type is $55. That gets you a whole host of really cool membership options, and I'm always happy to go into that at any time if anyone has questions. But as always, we really want to make it official. We want to count you. We want to make sure that we work well for you. So if you can, please join us officially for the NJEVA. So without further ado, I want to go into today's agenda. There's going to be a policy update at the front of today's agenda, giving everybody an update about what's kind of going on. There's been a lot of really crazy stuff with the BBB, not the Better Business Bureau, but the big beautiful bill. What's been going on with that California waiver, demystifying some of that stuff. Some cool upcoming events like the first responder training, and then an August in-person meeting, exciting stuff. I'm calling it a Kilowatt cookout until anybody stops me because I'm a little punny. But I'm running our in August in-person meeting, so I'm very excited to talk to you folks about that. And then talking about getting involved. National Drive Electric Month is in September. It feels like a world away, but summer really doesn't last very long, as our inner child always likes to tell us. So we're going to talk about National Drive Electric Month in September. And then on finally, community leadership, how to host an EV show or ride and drive. As much as I really love Alex and Pat and Dennis and Andy and all of our really lovely e-board members showing up and showing out and doing a phenomenal job being captains, we want to see you folks run an EV show. Step up and run an EV ride and drive. Help us and co-captain one of these events. We want to hear your EV love story. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, I'm going to open up the floor and I'm going to get kind of, misty-eyed and ask us to collaborate a little bit and ask you some generalized questions if we've got anybody in the room that wants to be a little chatty with us. So without further ado, I'm going to toss this up here. This is a lot of text. It's meant to be something called a distribution deck, meaning you don't absorb all of this right now, meaning you take this back and you absorb it on your own time. I'm not expecting us all to kind of have this in our brains. The thing that I want you to all understand from this is the fact that the Clean Air Act is something that the federal government holds as a unique authority to regulate emissions for new motor vehicles. It's like a really big thing. And then under that Clean Air Act, the federal government basically has preemption prohibition that prevents any individual state from adopting or enforcing a separate emission standard, except California. They have specific waivers that have allowed them since the age-old era under something called Section 209B of the Clean Air Act. I'm looking at notes here because there's a lot here. And through that, the EPA has been required to grant a waiver unless it can demonstrate a couple of following things. And so through that process, that whole entire thing has been called the California waiver. I've just given you like a decade of background and a couple of bullet points. So why is this important? It refers to fuel cell electric vehicles, hydrogen electric vehicles of all kinds, uh, battery electric vehicles, and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles under the entire waiver itself. And the important thing here is that we had a couple of separate different waivers that were already approved from California, going all the way back to 2021 and even the end of 2024, that different ones like the Omnibus, Advanced Clean Cars 2, and Advanced Clean Trucks had all said, yep, 2 thumbs up, California is approved. But as of January of 2025, this is the important part where history is kicking in, an executive order called Unleashing American Energy included provisions to terminate these California waivers, to prevent California from being able to do certain types of more stringent emissions requirements that would subsequently impact any type of greenhouse gas emission standards. Section 177 states, that's New Jersey, we're one of 17 different states that have opted in. States like DC are included in that, are now going to lose their grounds to be able to do more strict emissions requirements. Why is that important? So EPA sent 3 of California's most recent waivers, that Omnibus, Clean Cars Tool, and Advanced Clean Trucks, over for the Congressional Review Act. This was huge because ever since it was passed in 1996 by Bill Clinton, this has never been done before. No one has ever pushed anything from California waiver over to Congress to review this. And the CRA is basically authorizing Congress to rescind any type of final regulation. The state might pass it, but Congress can overturn it. Fast forward to May, the day before my birthday, worst birthday gift ever. And the Senate passed a series of joint resolutions under the Congressional Review Act that overturned these 3 really critical California waivers. It was unprecedented, like I said. It was the first time the waiver had ever been considered to be subject to the CRA since Clinton signed it into law in 1996. A couple weeks later, June 12th, 3 huge things happened on the same exact day. June 12th was busy. So we had President Donald Trump that signed a series of joint resolutions that stated that the EPA cannot approve similar and future waivers for California that are disapproved in those joint resolutions, meaning that in the future, we cannot have California put through any more waivers that are similar to Advanced Clean Cars 2. In response, California Attorney General Rob Bonta, Gavin Newsom, and a whole bunch of other folks led a coalition to file a lawsuit against the federal government that challenged this unprecedented use of power. He also went forward and said, you know what? We're going to do our own stunts. We're doing this ourselves, and I don't care that you said that I can't by signing this series of joint resolutions that said that the EPA cannot approve these future waivers. Governor Gavin Newsom said, that's fine, we're doing it anyway, and actually told California and CARB to go and propose Advanced Clean Cars 3 anyway, even after Advanced Clean Cars 2 was just put through the ringer and they just got rid of it. They're also saying that they want to update purchasing guidelines and direct agencies to propose new strategies to accelerate ZEV adoption across the state. So why do we care in New Jersey? Why is this stuff happening an entire world away matter for us? And that's because the entirety of the country follows California. We get our legal standing by following what California does. It's legal grounds. And so by revoking California's vehicle emissions waivers, it's got wide-ranging implications across the industry. And because the foundations in these frameworks are built upon the California waiver, it's going to make it harder for entities like utilities to have certainty about what the electric vehicle adoption rates look like across the country. No utility wants to be first. It's very scary. So if anybody's at home saying, man, PSE&G has been acting kind of strange, or hey, JCP&L has been acting kind of slow, or maybe Atlantic City Electric is doing this. They all try to act as one cohesive group following something called minimum filing requirements overseen by the Board of Public Utilities. If the Board of Public Utilities doesn't have any type of regulatory authority from the California waiver, if our NJDEP doesn't have any type of authority to go forth and do this as a Section 177 state, we start to lose the ground upon which we stand to be able to go forward and do more for electric vehicles, to make the unequivocal requirement that says we should build more charging stations. We should offer incentives for electric vehicle charging at home. We should do more with HOAs. We should do more for multi-unit dwellings. We start to lose the things that we have ground for. And then things like Red Hook Terminal start to look like a one-off rather than the start of something awesome. So this is just something that's really important that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention because it's going to have long-standing impacts for the future, and it's going to be something we definitely want to look at. And so I'll definitely continue to monitor what's happening in the California situation with the waiver resolutions and what's going on moving forward. The next thing that's a little bit closer to home for all the folks we've got here is the big, beautiful bill signed by Trump on July 4th. Man, does that taste like freedom. It's adding some complexity to securing electric vehicles. And the long and the short of it is that as of September 30th, I bolded that date for everybody. We are not going to be able to have access to the $7,500 cash on the hood incentive that would have been available. That if you, or sorry, not cash on the hood incentive, tax credit that would have been available. On top of that, the $4,000 used electric vehicle incentive will also be gone. So unless you purchase or lease prior to September 30th of 2025, you will not be able to get those tax credits when you file your taxes in 2026. It won't be available. Meanwhile, the Chart of New Jersey incentives are now kicking back in as of right now. So it's going to be a really hot period for electric vehicle purchases right now. We're going to see probably a very huge curve for the summertime for vehicle buying. It's probably going to be really high demand and probably really stringent supply. And Andy may want to chime in on that one because Andy's my go-to guy for asking things like this. But between the fact that September is going to end federal tax credits, we just had, as of the beginning of July, the kick in of Charge of New Jersey. We have a whole host of other things. It's going to be a really interesting time to buy. But what else is going on? We have people that should be aware that potential buyers and lessees now have a new $250 annual registration fee. If you already own an EV, boy howdy, have you already gotten this in your inbox, and you've already gotten this in your mail, and you see that $250 is now due for your registration. On top of that, July 1st of this year is now the official 9 months later sunsetting of the zero emission waiver from the NJDEP and otherwise, that for the last 20 years, we have had a New Jersey state sales tax exemption for all zero emission vehicles. That has now officially sunsetted. Everyone will be required to pay 6.625% at point of purchase. That could be like $3,000, $5,000, depending upon the EV. It's a pretty penny. And if you're adding another $1,000 up front for new buyers with that registration fee, we're starting to see much higher costs. So we're probably going to see a dip in the market after September 30th of 2025, and it's going to be a very interesting time. So I'm going to pause really quick on all those policy updates. Again, this is a distribution deck. This is meant to be like point of information for you to absorb it and then go back to it later. But I'll pause right now and see if anybody has any questions before I move on. I'm mentally counting in my head so I don't have too much dead space. All right, hearing none. I'm gonna move on. We have some interesting events coming up, specifically the First Responder EV Awareness Program. I'm very excited about this. Having a deeper connection to our first responder community is critical. So NJEVA and Easy Ride are very pleased to offer an EV awareness program for our first responders here in the state of New Jersey. So it's specific to firefighters for EV specific safety procedures deployed on the scene. So that way, if you have any electric vehicle collisions, they are aware of how to address certain considerations, especially where the safety disconnects are. I'll remind everybody, this is not EVs spontaneously combusting. This requires specific impact and puncturing of the battery pack. We're not seeing random Teslas and Chevy Bolts but bursting in flames. They're not turning into candles. But this is something where we're having to make sure that in the event that this happens and they need to combat thermal runaway, how do they find the safety disconnect? Where are the specific safety guides? Certain brands like Mercedes-Benz have a QR code on the inside of where the charging port is, but where do people find the manuals? Where should they be looking for this information? What apps are available? We've got Mike Hornsby, who's amazing and has been a really big advocate in the space. He's going to be leading a really awesome program on a lot of occasions. So this particular event, we're calling all EV volunteers to bring their vehicles and allow first responders to get a really hands-on understanding of how different EVs have parts in the different places, how you may not have the same approach to fighting a fire depending upon what make and model it is, even within different ranges of the same make and model. So because of that, we would love for you to show up. It's on Tuesday, July 29th at 8 p.m. But if you're bringing your EV, we would love for you to arrive 10 minutes early, get your parking, since all those vehicles will be parked inside next to the firehouse, right in the front. Also, pizza and light refreshments are going to be provided, so don't worry, you won't be leaving on an empty stomach. So you'll have a full brain and you'll have a full stomach. Moving on to the next thing. Um, I'm excited and very pleased to talk about the August in-person meeting called the Kilowatt Cookout. I will pause once I go through this, so that way we can kind of get some feedback on this. But tentatively, the date is going to be on Sunday, August 10th, around 1 o'clock p.m. The location is still TBD. I'm in the process of narrowing down locations after speaking with the rest of the e-board on where good locations in New Jersey might be. The exciting news is that I secured a micro grant of $250 from Generation 180 to support the event. Generation 180 is actually working in coordination with the National Electric Vehicle Association on a campaign that you may or may not have heard about called 10,000 Rides. That link is at the bottom, and I'm happy to drop that into the chat in just a moment. But Generation 180 has been talking about you taking somebody on a ride, somebody being driven by you somewhere, and that person now being exposed to what being a passenger in an electric vehicle is like. And so to that end, we're really hoping to host a casual community-oriented cookout to foster connection among our members and also just the general public, which is why I was hoping to host this at a public park or other similar venue. So our goal is to kind of demonstrate the real world utility of certain EVs that do have bidirectional capabilities, but beyond the road. So we're gonna do a tailgate. We're gonna hold a barbecue. We're gonna allow people to see that you can use your electric vehicle for the fun stuff, for camping, for hobbies. But we can also talk about the fact that in the event of, the terminology black sky conditions, if you're from the utility world, or just power outage, when the lights go out, how do you make sure that your refrigerator stays on? I personally just had an experience where the power went out at my house and I needed to make sure that I powered my refrigerator and make sure I didn't lose all the food. So how do we make sure that we talk about the really cool aspects and technology that our electric vehicles inherently have and talk about the really awesome features? We want to tell a story. So we hope to highlight member enthusiasm, ownership of this exciting technology, and also have this really cool educational opportunity. The only requirement from doing the microgrant is that we take pictures and talk about it. It's the only requirement as a baseline. So to that end, I just wanted to kind of showcase what that's going to be and talk about what that proponent is. So I will pause there again and see if anybody, either e-board or general member, wants to ask any questions about the August in-person meeting, and tell me whether or not my idea of calling it the Kilowatt Cookout is too kooky.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I looked into the bidirectional charging about 6 months ago. It was $35,000 for the install. So I didn't move
Oh,
forward with it.
so certain vehicles inherently have something called bidirectional capabilities. The Nissan Leaf, the Ford F-150 Lightning, Rivians, my Kia EV6, the vehicles themselves inherently have capability within the vehicles themselves. That it's not just a one-way flow of energy where you feed from the charger into the battery themselves, and then once it's in the battery, it must be used to power the vehicle. It has bidirectional flow, meaning you can take the power back out of the battery for another purpose. It doesn't mean you have to connect it to your home. That's called V to H capabilities or vehicle to home capabilities. So that would be you installing some type of system, charger, or energy storage device in your home to allow you to either capture the solar that's on your roof, the battery that's coming from your car back to the home, and installing some type of inverter to allow your home to process that and then push all of the energy where it needs to go. So it has an energy management system to think and push the energy where it's needed most. What we're talking
Okay.
about as part of this like tailgate is do you own a vehicle that has one of those bi-directional plugs where if you plug it into the back like my EV6 has, I can plug a 110-volt plug into the back of a special adapter and run tech off of my car. That could be anything from a fan, an electric grill, a mister, a speaker system. I was thinking of potentially getting an icy machine. It's going to be hot outside. Giving people ice treats is going to be great, but seeing an icy machine run off of an EV would be a pretty cool way to show that like you can run large appliances off of an EV. So that's what we talk about when we say bidirectional, not necessarily like the $35,000 thing, just the inherent feature that's like built into your car.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were talking V2H. Oh,
Does that
okay.
make sense, Richard?
Oh, yeah, yeah, now it does. Yeah, I thought you meant the vehicle to home charging.
Hey,
Yes.
Ashley, I like the Kilowatt Cookout. I think that's a great name.
Does anybody else have any comments about the August in-person meeting? And does anybody else have vehicles that they know have bidirectional capabilities that you're like, ah, that would actually be pretty cool. I can bring my, Ford F-150 Lightning, or that you're kind of available around Sunday, August 10th. I'd love to hear your thoughts before I move on.
Yeah, so it's Rob. My Genesis GV60 has
Awesome.
we call it the VTL, I think, vehicle to load, but that has that capability. I've never used it, but I don't imagine it'll be too difficult. In fact, at a couple of our recent shows, other folks in the organization have powered coffee pots and other devices from their car.
Yeah. I've seen somebody power a whole entire gaming system off the back of their vehicle. So honestly, it's really cool. And I wanted to show different ways that you can power different types of tech, and make it very cool and inviting for the public to walk up. So if you're willing to bring your Genesis, I would love to show it and show people that there's different types of vehicles that this is equipped with. It's not just one type. And that there's a variety of different price points that these vehicles come at. So if you are available around August 10th, we would love to have you. Fender bender not included. I don't know if it's the Genesis that you're currently in right now.
It is, but it is. I'll be there. Although
Wonderful.
I'd rather, hot summer day, I'd rather be grilled. I'd rather that we serve hot dogs, not kilowatts.
Funny enough, I'm thinking of trying to do, well, we will have catering involved in this. That's part of what the $250 is part of. And so we definitely want to have like a whole entire cookout as part of this. We would definitely be serving some type of food, definitely some iced beverages, have some fans going, maybe some misters, cold treats to kind of entice people to come over. But hopefully finding a location outdoors where we're under some type of shade, or a nice tree cover that wherever the vehicles are parked, hopefully there's tree cover near it. So we don't terribly have to worry about baking in the sun. That's my fingers crossed hope. So I've been scoping out and driving to a couple locations. So that's why the location is TBD. And I'll get it cleared with the rest of the e-board before I officially announce it. Does anybody else have any comments before I move on from the Kilowatt Cookout?
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Sounds fun.
All right. Next big thing on the agenda, we have National Drive Electric Month, 2 months out of the year, and we get a whole month for electric vehicles. I'm pretty jazzed about that. April was Drive Electric Earth Month, DEEM. Now we have National Drive Electric Month, which starts September 12th and goes until October 12th. So we get a whole month as a nationwide celebration to raise awareness on the many benefits of electric and plug-in hybrid cars. So the cool thing is that if you've kind of been new to the movement and you're like, I thought this was a National Drive Electric Week, we get a whole month for this now. The short answer is not only should we get a whole month because it's a lot more time for us to do things, but it helps us spread out events, which I'm pretty jazzed about. So here's just a couple that are already on the agenda that, just scoping out the website to see what's available. One's already slated for Metuchen, which is the Metuchen Street Fair and Environmental Commission Green Fair. They've already registered this one on the National Drive Electric Month website. The other one is an EV show that's happening in Hunterdon Community Farmers Market on Sunday, September 14th. And then we have a Westfield EV car show that's happening on Saturday, October 4th. Technically, this very first one that's on August the 17th isn't technically part of the NDEM month in September, but that is okay. I'm still going to include it because it was registered on the website. But this is just an example of how you can kind of find all of the different events and we can kind of lock in. Our focus is to kind of question, though, when we look at the map and we start to see where events are for National Drive Electric Month, the national organization has been asking us, where can we go that we haven't gone before? What communities can we reach that haven't heard our message? Because sometimes it's a lot easier to talk to people where we think the message is going to be well received. We can't keep going into the same communities where they already know us super well, because you're going to start to talk to people and they're going to be like, oh, my cousin already drives an EV. Oh, I bought an EV last year. I just need to have my wife drive EV. And at that point, we're starting to overlap the message a little bit too much. We need to start to get into the communities that have greater need. More urban environments, more city environments, more locations where they potentially even have transportation deserts, and we're having issues where they can't use a city bus. They don't have mass transportation and they do need to use a personal vehicle. So how do we start to make all of those miles clean miles? And what does that look like? So the questions we kind of ask are, how do we expand the events that we have for the captains that we've already had for North, Central, and South to go to locations and make sure that we're reaching a new audience and making sure that our messaging is well received. The National trained a bunch of the e-board members recently at an event talking about how do we reach communities, how do we pair our events like EV shows and ride and drives with existing events like green fairs and other types of street fairs to make sure that we already have a captive audience, and what can we do in order to reach these communities better. So as we get closer to end down, this is something I'm going to probably work with Mario and Stan about, to start to reach out to all of you and ask the question, what community do you want us to do an EV show or ride and drive in? But also, do you want to captain one? Do you want to be somebody who does an event in one of these locations? And how can we best support you so that way we can move forward and start to reach communities and areas that we traditionally haven't been in before? I'd love for us to be able to give you the tools and the resources to do that. And so with that, I want to start to kind of get into community leadership and how to host an event. I'm going to welcome either Mario or I think I've got Alex on the phone. Everybody came out today, but I'm gonna offer a couple other folks on the call to like kick in their thoughts and feelings after I quickly go through this slide, which is just a really high level thought on how do we raise EV visibility and engage your community in a fun, impactful way. And I'll just quickly go through this slide and then kick it over to them. But the baseline is you're picking a location or partnering with an existing event. We're talking farmers markets, parks, local fairs, events that already exist. And make sure that you're co-captaining with somebody that has either a connection or otherwise, and making sure that you're contacting the organizer and ensuring that there's appetite or physical room to accommodate some type of EV show or ride and drive. From there, choosing a date and a time about 4 to 6 weeks out to ensure that planning and outreach is optimal. You don't want to do this last minute. And then from there, talking to us as the e-board, making sure that we can help you with online postings, walking you through insurance coverage, what does signage look like, and we can help you with support promotion for the Facebook page and other types of things like newsletters. And then also, the last thing is just recruiting fellow members. You can talk to local owners, friends, other members of the NJEVA to show their vehicles, to help at the table. And we can always provide guidance on creating that sign up form. So that way you can figure out who's available to assist you and support. But the reminder is always that even 3 to 5 vehicles is a really great start to an event, because you don't want to have some 25 vehicle event that's very unwieldy for you to manage. Even just starting small so people have their very first touch point with an EV is still really successful. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to let Mario and others kind of chime in on their experiences of how they've hosted some of their events, what their first events kind of looked like, and feel free to kind of chime in what their thoughts are for hosting an event and co-captaining.
Can I chime in, or do you want to go first,
Yeah,
Mario?
Alex, you're in
Okay.
there. Go for it.
It's all about foot traffic and butts and seats, right? So try to find events that you can, add to that already have foot traffic and things like that. Some of the best events I've been to are like street fairs or green fairs attached to street fairs that have a bunch of electric vehicles on them, right? Because there are so many people there, or festivals or things like that. Green fairs, I mean, they're like, it depends on the green fair, right? If you're talking about the ACUA fair, where it's this huge green fair and you have like, thousands of people that come there, over the course of the day, then yeah, that's a great event. But but the little tiny green fairs, they tend to be very incestuous. That's probably not the group of people that we really need to talk to. It's great.
Mhm.
Bring a couple of cars. It's a good start event. But I think really the most impact are on those big events that have a lot of foot traffic.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Well
the
said.
same thing. Any event where you have captive audience, right? So in addition to green fairs, community days, also workplaces. I think my very first EV
Mm.
show was actually in the office, right? So
Mhm.
we blocked out a section of the parking lot, and then we got a few dealers to bring some cars, and then people were able to check them out when they went out to eat lunch or go for a walk. So don't underestimate your colleagues.
Yeah,
Terrific.
we had an event at work, and we set up the cars right the line for food outside. So they had a big, a big thing outside, and it was a big barbecue and everything, and everybody who was queuing to go in and get their food went right past us. And we had lots of conversations with people. It was a pretty good event for that reason. And we had people who worked there bring their EVs, so
Yep.
it was people who they knew, and that sort of thing, which is another good idea always. People in the community.
I've seen it where at a local fair, they actually put the EV installation right in the center where the food trucks were. So you actually had the EV show in the center where you could walk around and look at them and talk to people. And the lines for the food trucks went right past the electric vehicles. So it made it really easy for people to be like, well, I'm bored. I might as well chat with somebody. And then once they got their food, they were like, well, I'm just gonna walk around and peruse all of these cars. I mean, they're here and I'm here anyway. And we ended up getting so many people to talk to us because of where we were placed. So
Mhm.
I always love it whenever you co-locate food or some other type of really cool amenity with wherever the installation is, not like in a parking lot behind the fair, 4 blocks back, where nobody can see
Mhm.
it. It's always good to be able to talk to organizers and have some really innovative ways that we can put together an installation. So these are all really great comments. Anybody else have
One more
something to add?
thing, yeah, just one more thing. Similar to what you were saying earlier, at the last green fair that we did, we had a Cybertruck providing the electricity for the band, and then an EV6 providing the electricity for the taco truck. So
Ooh.
finding ways to showcase the EVs as well, even where people wouldn't think of an EV.
Yeah, we've powered only a couple times, but we've powered food trucks. Well, like once it was a food truck, another time it was they had like a race. It was at a street fair, and they had like slot racing, I guess, something like that. And we powered that with the vehicle. Um, and I've been trying to, I kind of had this vision where I wanted to try to get like a whole street fair without generators, and just get the word out to everybody that we would find people to power if they were using a generator. But that turned out to not work out because so many of the vendors are concerned about liability, or
Mm.
they all needed to have backups anyway. And where do you put all the cars? So the organizers were like, well, we're not going to be able to stick them everywhere we have a generator. So it didn't really work out, but someday.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to be said for using EVs in interesting, creative, and innovative ways to get people to look at them and say, huh, that's definitely not a golf cart. That's not what I thought an EV was, and kind of repackaging what their view of it was. So I think these are all really great points. Um, I'm gonna also have you guys chime in after I go through this next slide, because I think talking a little bit about how we capture foot traffic and how we tell our story is super important. But let me just go through this very next slide really quick. What are the roles that we normally have when hosting an event? So I tried to break these down as best I could, and kind of conceptualize it. Because if somebody's like, I'm interested, I want to run an event, but what the heck does that involve? Like, you've got me. I think I want to do it, but what does that mean? Let's break it down for a second. You've got captains and co-captains. They generally coordinate planning. They create the event on the DEEM or NDEM web pages to let people know that they exist. It's one of the great sources of knowledge if you've got a bunch of EV nerds that would say, hey, I want to show my car, I want to volunteer. Generally check Deem and NDEM web pages, one of the best ways to get the word out. But what else? You've also got our Facebook pages and other types of branded pages that exist. They generally perform admin work and also oversee the volunteers. And then they also perform additional tasks if you've got a ride and drive that's tacked onto that. If you tack on a ride and drive to any EV show, you're going to have to be doing things like coordinating the ride and drives with those dealers, securing vehicles for the event, and then noting the location and what that route should be, and then coordinating with the venue and acting a liaison. So sometimes security will say, you can't park over here because that's a fire lane, but you can park over here. Security dictates that your, licensing should look like this or your assurance should look like that. Talk to us at the e-board. We've done it a ton of times, and we've got some really great folks on the line right now who have done really successful ride and drives and really great EV shows. I look to them for so many different things. They're phenomenal. Who else do we normally need? Volunteers. It doesn't work without the people who show up. So showing off their EVs, answering questions, but more importantly, telling their EV love story. We're going to go over that in a second. And then also you need somebody who's handing out things physically at the table and somebody who's physically a waypoint to direct people to, capturing like information. So handing out flyers, educating the public, answering questions. What are some pro tips from a smooth event? A canopy, some folding chairs, water, your basic amenities. Canopies are great whether rain or shine. But when you're providing NJEVA handouts or EV info sheets from partners, paper weights are exceptionally helpful. I cannot overstate how awesome paper weights are. Me running through a parking lot to get a rock to prevent papers from flying away is not a good look. Wear your EVA shirt or name tag. We have some really awesome shirts that Stan has had for a little while. We've got hats. We've got a lot of awesome, really cool swag to give out. We would love for you to wear it so that way you can rock the swag. Post events and reminders on the NJEVA web pages and the EV enthusiast pages. And also just make sure that you take photos and send them to the NJEVA so that way we can celebrate your impact and we can talk about the cool work that you've done. These are just kind of the high level things that I've identified and tried to put onto a slide. But again, I'm going to let the other folks who have run far more events than I have talk a little bit about this and any of their hot tips and like pro things that they want to talk about. So Alex, Mario, Dennis, you want to chime in on any of these different things about the roles and some pro tips?
Advertising is really important sometimes. I mean, if you have a big draw event, then maybe that's not as important because you're relying on that event. But if you're doing a presentation at a library or you're doing a smaller event or you're trying to find, even volunteers to come to a local cruise night or car show or something like that, local advertising is really important, and social media is a great way to do that. And don't be afraid to pay. If you can always pay for advertising in social media. And if that's something that you want our organization to pay for, then let us know. We'll try to make it happen.
We have a budget.
Yeah. So, because the more eyeballs you can get on the event, the more people who might be interested will show up, and it's hard to get your message out sometimes. So
Yeah,
for sure.
and just to piggyback on that, it's as cheap as $1 a day
right.
to boost something on Facebook, for example.
Yeah, especially if it's only for 2 weeks. That's leading up to an event to get eyeballs on something for
Yep.
2 weeks leading up to an event. That's $14, maybe with a small surcharge attached to that. We certainly have budget for $15 if I don't hear Stan yelling from across the ocean at me. Absolutely, I think we've got some budget for $15 to be able to do some branded marketing on Facebook and run a targeted ad for folks that are in New Jersey. So if folks are saying, I want to host an event, but I don't know if I can get, butts and seats. I don't know if I can get eyeballs on the flyer that I've made. I don't know if I can get the right people there. Marketing is absolutely key. Alex definitely hit the nail on the head there. All right.
Just a
So
quick word from the guy
go
who
for
was
it.
crazy enough to launch an event back in 2018 in 3 weeks. That was very exciting. I think one of the things that we underestimate is the power of people around you. And it was
Mhm.
literally that event. We had 8 vehicles. We did 60 ride and drives that day. We made a
awesome.
convert of the one male who never experienced an EV. He now is a double EV household. And it was just literally, you know, talk about being naive. I had no concept about liability, about insurance and all that. Just called a bunch of friends and said, hey, I know you have a car. We're going to do it at the farmer's market. Can you come by and then talk to the visitors? Sure. So it could be that simple if you really make it that simple, or it could be as complex as you want. And then the only other tip that I would suggest is if you have a friend who happens to be a photographer, I would highly recommend trying to snag them for the day, because it's almost probably the hardest thing with these events is to get decent pictures because you're too busy running around trying to coordinate everything.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right. If anybody's been on social media, if anybody's, heard from the National EVA, scrolled their Instagram, been on Twitter, been on Facebook, LinkedIn, you've probably seen at least once the hashtag EV Love Story. And short of grabbing your local candelabra and your favorite red and trying to sit across a table and be like an ode to my Nissan Leaf, there's really, an art that goes into telling your EV love story to the guy that just walked up to a table at that local green fair, and not just info dumping on that person about how much you love your car. There's an art to it. So we're going to talk about that right now, about how to tell your EV love story, what that looks like. And then if anybody is on the call today and they want to practice or talk about it, we can do that. But the long and the short of it is that we want you to tell your EV love story on social media, at EV shows, at ride and drives. But the question is, how do you tell a good story? We all like to think that we're great storytellers, but we've all had that one really garrulous uncle at a holiday that just went on and never got to the point. And you have no idea what a rubber chicken had to do with the time that he got arrested. You have no idea. And two things just don't connect. So sometimes you have to make sure that where you start and where you end feels relevant, timely, and engaging for the audience that you're talking to. So to that end, we want stories that inspire connection, that help build engagement, because at the end of the day, people are going to remember feelings more than they remember features, more than they remember anything else. So we want you folks to start to build that trust, that relatability, that curiosity when people walk up to a table, when people ask you about your vehicle. And I'll never forget when Dennis started telling me about his journey with both of his smart cars, with how he started with his first one, started with his second one, and the fact that he started talking about the fact that he can work with level 2 charging. He loves his smaller vehicle. You don't need to go big in order to be better. You can actually have a smaller vehicle and have everything that you need literally within arm's reach. And it works for all of his needs. And I loved the way that he told his story to me when I was at that one EV show with him. He did a phenomenal job executing that story when he was telling it to people walking by. So those things are things that are repeatable and relatable. So what's a common pitfall that normally happens? And I've heard this at a couple of EV shows. I won't call anybody out. But the thing that I always hear is the info dump, the tech explaining, the too many facts. You get a glazed over eye in the audience. And when you lead with things like MPGE or level 2 charging amperage and what people can install at home, and you lead with that and they didn't ask for it, people get really confused. You need to start with something that's very low level. So what does an actual EV love story look like? Let's talk about a structure really quick. What was your life like before driving electric? Did you have high gas prices? Was your commute long and uncomfortable? Did you have environmental concerns? Like, what was it like? Just paint a picture, 1 to 2 sentences. Then what was the moment that made you switch to an EV? What was your aha? Did you take a test drive and realize that the acceleration was awesome? Did you have a conversation with somebody that made you realize that driving an EV was probably a better bet than the gas guzzler? Did you crunch the numbers and realize that your budget just couldn't take it anymore, but switching over actually meant that your operations and maintenance made way more sense? What was the moment that it all changed? Then talk about the now. What has changed? How do you feel? Are you excited to drive electric? Do you have savings on your commute? Is it quieter, cleaner, better conscience? You like the impact on the environment? What's the thing that matters to you? We want to have you folks spark enthusiasm and passion in your message, but by having all of those different relatable components, peppered into what you're talking about in a series of maybe 6 to 8 sentences, the equivalent of a single paragraph. That means 2 minutes. You can get an entire series of feelings across that have peppered in messages about driving electric. You could talk about the really cool things rather than leading with, did you know that EVs have 1/3 of the moving parts of an internal combustion engine vehicle? Or you spend approximately 30% than when you were driving a gas vehicle on fueling and operations. Like, we don't have to go into the stat logic. We can talk about it in story format. And I think it's really important to talk about what our EV love story is in a way that's more relatable rather than the info dump that traditionally happens. So I want to kind of inspire everybody that when we're going to new communities, when we're talking to folks we've never interacted with before, how do you tell your EV love story? And what does that look like for you? So my question is, does anybody want to tell me their EV love story? Does anybody want to tell me theirs, if you're brave enough, about what your before moment and now looked like? And kind of do a quick run through. If not, I can always talk about mine. I'm garrulous by nature, but I'll throw it out to the crowd and see if anybody wants to volunteer themselves.
I'll go if nobody else wants to go.
Go for it, Alex. What's your EV love story? Tell us.
So 13 years ago, we had a second child, right? And I'd been thinking a lot about climate change and what their future, what impact that might have on their future. And so I was thinking, we needed a new car, and I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll get an efficient car, you know? So I test drove the Prius. It was, I mean, at the time that was a hybrid, you know, and it was okay. It was a nice car, you know. And then I test drove the Nissan Leaf. And, you know, the Nissan Leaf isn't a Tesla, but the torque that car had, it just tore off the line. And I just remember the feeling, like, I was expecting to have to get a, you know, kind of a rice burner type experience when I knew I wanted, that's what I had prepared myself for. And when I drove that Nissan Leaf, I remember, oh, dude, I got to go do the math. I got to figure out if this is going to work for me. And because we didn't, you know, both of our commutes are relatively short. It's like 12 miles, right? We managed to drive that Nissan Leaf. It's 13 years now. We still drive. My son, my older son now is driving. He's going to Rutgers in the fall, and he's been driving that car. We have an Ioniq 5 and a Chevy Volt in our family as well now. But that, I just remember that first experience. And now I feel like I'm kind of that guy who's gone over the hill and I've seen the other side. And I'm just so excited that, hey, this works. You can be a green person and still have a functional car that's actually better than your gas car experience, you know. And I'm just so excited about that's why I'm going to these shows and I'm sharing that experience with everyone.
That is phenomenal. That's a really, really compelling story, Alex, because you talked about environmental concerns. You talked
Mhm.
about your commuting habits. You talked about the fact that you still have the car, and now your son has the car. You talked about the really awesome driving experience and the test drive. And you somehow looped in the really low operations, maintenance, and fueling cost story into that with the budget when you were like, I gotta crunch the numbers. And then you even talked about the now with like what it looks like, the fact that you're still an EV driver and the fact that you're now bringing up the next generation of EV drivers driven by that environmental story. You have so many really awesome things looped into that story that somebody can link on to just one of those things and they can run with it and now ask you questions as a result of that and be like, tell me more about what the length of time is that somebody normally owns a car. I had to get rid of my car after 6 years. It died. You mean these things last more than 10 years? People can start asking you, like, I thought the batteries like die, or you have to do something about like really expensive battery swaps. They can start asking you all of these follow-up questions. And you have such a great story to kind of give people all these nuggets of wisdom they can lock onto. And I love it.
Thank you. I could literally talk about, like, I think most of the people in this chat
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. I could talk about it for hours and hours. So
Oh, for sure. I've seen your EV 101 presentations and the way that you do your talks, and they're always really engaging. So it's awesome when I get to see people kind of in their element. And I'm glad that you were able to be the example rather than me just talking the entire time. For the folks that are watching back on the recording in the future, we'll be able to have a good example. Does anybody else want to share their EV story before I move on? Because I think that that's a really great example from Alex. But if anybody else wants to share theirs, and talk about it, I think Robert is kind of holed up and busy right now. But Richard, if you want to share yours and kind of talk us through it, you're welcome to. Um, but I want to throw it out to the crowd again.
There, had to mute my mic. I like driving the EV because I like to spread mud on the carpet. To quote Johnny Cash, I like to shake things up. I live in this area here. It's all petrochemical. I have gas pipelines running underneath the street out here, and it broke. It broke one year, and it flooded my neighborhood. So I have a thing about gasoline. I don't like it. It's very polluting. So I drive an EV just to protest that. Now, I not to be contrary, but I like driving an EV just to be different. It challenges people's balance. They reach the balance in their life where they can go fill their car up with gas enough to last a week and takes like 5 minutes. And that, they've gotten very comfortable with it. You pay the guy at the gas station and then you move on and you're set for the week. But, I came along with my EV and, I have, they're like 250 miles. I own 2 EVs. I've owned 3 in my life. And I can't go back to gasoline because I just have a thing against it. But that's my whole reason for driving EV.
It's important though. It's a big environmental message. And for some people that's really critical that they're like, I'll never go back to gas. It's polluting. It's something that's really important to me and I don't want to have to support the petrochemical industry. So this is my act of revolution that I don't have to be like everybody else waiting at the pump. I wake up and my car is full. I fueled at my own house. And I never have to support that industry ever again. And it's an act of revolution. It's an act of a green revolution. And I can do that. And that's something that I can do personally. I don't have to rely on anybody else. That's something that I can do within my own power. And that's a really powerful story, Richard. I think that's great. And that's a really awesome thing that moves you. So I'm really thankful you shared that with us.
Yeah, I've always been, a bit of a hippie my whole life. I grew up, born in the 50s, grew up in the 60s. And I really did support alternative lifestyles. And it's nice having an alternative to gasoline, which we didn't have back in the 60s. We had no choice. Now we have an option. And I like getting that message out there. That's the first thing I tell people. I said, I have a choice. I don't have to buy gasoline. I can choose, just to, plug in. And, I've always been solar too. All my homes I've owned, both homes had solar on them.
Mhm.
So, the electricity is essentially free. Now, granted, solar is expensive, but that's not the point. It's not about money. I'm wealthy. I retired with a boatload of money. It's not about the money. It's about saving the environment and driving a car that's clean.
I think it's good to be able to give people the choice, though, of saying, you don't have to drive gas. You can make the choice if you're, feasibly able to, or if we can increase the affordability of that vehicle and of that charging and give people access to it. And I think you're also telling a really good story about consumer choice, about if they want to, you don't have to buy gas if you never want to again. If you don't want to smell fumes, if you don't want to drive a vehicle that's fueled by petrochemicals, you don't have to. There's options that are out there now. There's different availability of product, and you can make that really powerful consumer choice, and that's something that you can do. So those are all really good messages, and I appreciate you sharing that with me and being able to talk through that. We're
You're
gonna
welcome.
transition to the last of this, and I'm gonna 7:57, and then we got like 10 minutes left, so we're right on the schedule and agenda. So I'm just gonna quickly open this up one more time and just ask these general questions. In no particular order. You don't have to answer them. But because of the fact that we've only got like a couple of folks on the call right now, who can probably talk. I know we've got Rob who might chime in, and then we've got Richard. Feel free to chime in as necessary, but my questions are more so posed to the two of you. But what would make you feel more confident about either presenting or tabling at an event? Are there topics that your friends or family ask about most when it comes to an EV? And what questions give you pause and you'd like more information from the NJEVA to help you navigate? What's the stuff that somebody asks you and you're like, ugh, and you may not have the information you need in order to answer it that we can maybe equip you with? In no particular order. You don't have to answer all of them, by the way.
So let me make a comment which relates to bullet number 3, topics that friends and family often ask me about.
Sure.
I was thinking about chiming in with my EV love story, but I really need to wordsmith it. I'll refer to this as my narrative, and it
Sure.
addresses the third bullet. I've been driving hybrids since 2006. One
Wow.
for 14 years, one for 2 years. When it's funny, we started out the meeting saying, "Hey, I may have to drop because I was in a little fender bender. I'm waiting for the police to come." Well, they came, they took the report, they're gone, and I'm moving on. But I was in an accident with my second hybrid. 2 high school kids were speed racing. It wasn't my fault, and it was unfortunately, my hybrid was totaled, so I had to start looking for a new car. I'm going to shift gears for a minute because I don't want to go into my whole story, but rather just my narrative. And my narrative is which addresses bullet point number 3 is pretty simple. I have not installed a level 2 charger in my home yet. And the reason I haven't is because when I purchased my EV60, pardon me, GV60, Genesis offered me 3 years of free high speed charging with Electrify America. And I can count on one hand the number of times I've had to stop and pay for charging. So for the past 35 months, now 35, almost 35 and a half months, I've always used Electrify America. I've charged for 30 minutes at a time. Hasn't cost me a dime. Now I regret to say that my narrative's going to change. I can't really use this as a selling point to somebody else because the car OEMs aren't offering these amazing deals like they used to. When I was shopping 3 years ago, a lot of the brands were offering 2 years of basically unlimited charging, and some were offering 3. And I got lucky with 3, and my luck has almost run out. But I will say that when I'm at the Electrify America charging station, I'm always talking to people with, other EVs. How do they like it? They ask me about mine. I'm sure of the things that many of the people on this call have gone through. And more recently, after I was given the EV Association magnet for the side of my car, some people would ask me about it. So now I'm giving them one of these little cards. I don't know if I'm holding this up correctly because I'm sitting in
We
the
can see
car.
what you're holding.
Yeah, basically encouraging them to, hey, you gotta sign up for the mailing list because it's loads of helpful information. I talk about EV advocacy, and this is prior to the the big ugly bill being passed. You know, the types of things that are at risk of going away, so on and so forth. So what I'm leading to is, gosh, how do we translate or convert folks who may sign up to the mailing list, sign up for the mailing list, to people who actually attend a meeting or two or are likely to join? I think anybody that just comes in out of the blue and it would have attended tonight's meeting would probably be very motivated to join.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
my what I'd like to tee off is a discussion, not for right now, but offline perhaps. You know, what we could do to boost membership by, you know, boosting email signups, right? Because once you have an email list, you can, you know, go from there. And clearly, there are a lot of people on the email list. I would presume that when someone I hand this card to goes to the website and fills out their information, our chapter, because this is a national website, our chapter has some visibility to the names that are added to the mailing list. Is that a correct assumption?
Not for the national. They would have to sign up for our mailing list. Is that correct, Mario?
No, we're able to see everyone actually. We just
Oh,
have
for
filters for the New
Okay.
Jersey mailings.
Okay. Because I know that we have our own MailChimp that we have in order to reach out to our members, and that's like 800 to 900 strong. We have a very long mailing list. But you're right, Robert. It's a very big challenge to get people to convert from, newsletters and going on Facebook to showing up to a meeting. We're asking people for their time, and it's a very precious thing. Nobody wants to give their time to something that they think is going to be a waste of it. It's an investment. And so I definitely think that it's a big barrier for us to now start to kind of motion and move people towards that very next critical step. And I think that's a big question that we usually talk about with the e-board folk of like, do we need to start sending out agendas sooner? Do we need to have topics that people care about more? So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to collaborate and ask people these questions today and be like, maybe in the future, I have topics for future meetings where I gear you folks up and we have conversations about how to prep you to answer some really tough questions. Or do mini trainings on how to make you confident about tabling or participating at an event for being volunteers. Because sometimes people get nervous about that kind of stuff. Making it tangible and worthwhile for somebody to show up to a meeting. And maybe changing up what the structure used to be of our previous meetings to make it more worthwhile for you guys to kind of chime in and participate. So we always appreciate when you guys give us that piece of feedback.
So on that note, with the Kilowatt Cookout coming up, I would imagine, you know, that would be something we could promote, A, to anybody on our mailing list, but B, for other people who go to public charging places like me, maybe if we have a card specific to our NJEVA and that event, I mean, I'd be happy to give it out to the 5 other people that are charging when I am, and then the 5 people waiting in line behind me. Just
I could
food for
try to
thought.
make something that's a printable, that if people are willing to print something at their own house, maybe that's in a 4-square, that all you would have to do is cut along the dotted lines. You can have a little quarter piece of a paper that you'd be able to give out to somebody while you're waiting at a charging station and just be like, come to the Kilowatt Cookout. It's on August 10th. And allow people to know what's going on. But my intention is to get all of those details probably done and dusted within the next week. So that way we have 3 weeks to do some really good marketing and push for what's going on for it so we can get everybody together. But you're right. I think the marketing and getting the word out is definitely critical.
I was asked
Okay.
a tough question.
Yeah.
They want to know where my car was made. Which country of origin did it come from?
Mm.
And I'm not sure why they asked that question. But, you know, I drive 2 Chevys and they're both made in Mexico.
So some manufacturers are more transparent about their manufacturing practices, and they talk about where both the battery is made and where the rest of it is made. Other manufacturers ascribe to Build America, Buy American requirements of where they actually put the vehicle together and construct the components for the battery packs in order to ascribe to certain types of requirements, regulations, and compliance metrics for both the internal components and the metals that are inside of it. People might be asking because they're concerned about child labor laws, because they're concerned about where the components were made in general, concerned that there's pollution in other countries, saying if it's in a country that has high levels of pollution, is this really more environmentally friendly than just your typical internal combustion engine vehicle? There's a lot of motivations why they might be asking that question, but we can always put that as a future topic that we address in a future meeting of how you look that up and how you trace your VIN to figure out where it came from and what manufacturers offer to create transparency so you can be better equipped to answer that question.
Yeah, I kept the Windows sticker. It has the breakdown on it, but like 40% of my car was only made in America. The rest was Mexico and other components, other countries. But I think what they're trying to lead to is about tariffs.
If it's, yeah, more recent conversations, then it might be tariffs. The good thing, because I have to follow the tariff conversation like a bloodhound, because of the tariffs that are specific to steel, and a lot of vehicles have quite a bit of steel in them, we're not going to get double tariffed on vehicles. The good thing is that with wherever the tariffs bounce back to and land, if a vehicle is getting tariffs placed upon it, it's not going to have the additional tariffs for steel doubled up and placed on top of that as well. If it's having tariffs placed on it as a vehicle, all of those are going to be applied as a vehicle. If it is exclusively raw components like steel, then is being applied exclusively as a raw tariff for steel. So you don't need to worry about us getting like double hit in the auto industry. They wrote specific exemptions and requirements into it so that way they didn't cripple the auto industry. So that
Yeah,
might be one of the things that might give you some type of leverage when you're talking in those conversations.
yeah, I
But it does
read that too.
have tariff.
However, I think the new Bolt 2027 model year is going to be made entirely in the USA. It's supposed to
Yeah,
be,
there's a lot of product lines that are moving.
yeah, I heard there's going to be entirely USA made car.
Yeah, it's definitely a question that we can start asking. And I can also start tracking and seeing where are the different product lines moving, who's making what, and who's starting to be more in compliance with Buy America, Buy American, and also who might just be giving up some of their product lines for now, and kind of pulling a cicada move and going underground, waiting stuff out until things kind of blow over, and then pushing their product lines out. Because there's a couple of manufacturers that have alluded to that, but they're saying that they're not going to release as many fully electric models as they thought they were because of the way that the market is shifting. So we might see a differentiation in the industry because of that as well. So all good questions to ask.
Okay.
I see a couple stragglers on the call who haven't really been very chatty, but I'm not going to force you. I just know that Robert and Richard have been willing for me to call them out, and they've been willingly chatty with me, which I appreciate, but I'm always happy to call people out. So Anya or Patsy, Steven, Suresh, if any of you also want to come up with mute and identify if any of these questions speak to you in any particular way, please feel free to do so. I'm more than happy to kind of, open up that conversation.
Well, I'm in Louisiana, which is another whole ball of wax.
Hey, I mean, I'll still ask, like, what topics do your friends and family ask about you when it comes to EVs? Because I feel like you have a whole different perspective.
Why was I stupid enough to move to the heart of oil and gas country while driving an electric car with a Biden bumper sticker?
I mean, it's definitely a question.
You're
For
my kind
sure.
of guy, Richard.
That's right.
Takes a
Yeah,
little courage.
That's how I feel.
I mean, I go to the few drive electric Earth events around here or drive electric week events around here, but it's always like the same half dozen people in the same out of way place. So
That's definitely the hard thing. And I think the National is just asking all chapters at this point to think a little bit bigger. And even here in New Jersey, we're really trying to ask ourselves, like, how often do we go to like Camden? We constantly hit up Newark, but like what inner city areas are we actually reaching when it comes to equity areas? Like, what are we actually doing to talk about people that need affordable, maybe used electric vehicles? Are we helping them navigate affordable public charging? Or charging at multi-unit dwellings and at HOAs. So even we're trying to figure out how do we reach more folks so it's not just an echo chamber and we're not just singing it around and make sure that we're actually reaching the right folks with our message. So I understand sometimes it gets hard.
The local power company here in New Orleans, several years back, got some grant money, and the city got some grant money, and they put in pretty good number of charge point level 2 chargers scattered around town. Some of the placement leaves me scratching my head.
I was in New Orleans in March and I looked at a few of those and I was like, I wouldn't have put it there, but I guess I'm glad that it's there. It's in any case. I'm just glad that it exists, but some of them are strange. So I don't blame you, Stephen.
Yeah, there are some of them where, although they have 2 charging ports, because of their placement, you can typically only use one at a time unless you drive up on the curb.
All blocked, and I don't get it.
Yeah, I was in eastern New Orleans earlier today, and I had a couple quick jobs to do with an hour and a half break between them. And that's like 10 miles from my house in Uptown. And I could find one publicly accessible charger in eastern New Orleans, which is a huge area. And it was a single port, and it was at a library. And there was a guy parked there in a Cadillac Escalade because he said his wife was coming from work so she could plug in because it was the only place in eastern New Orleans for her to charge. And by him parking there, he was able to save it for her. And I didn't really need it. I was just going to charge because I was in the area and hunting for something to do to kill an hour or two. But there leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah. I think it lends itself with a lot of questions about how do we start to advocate for better charger placement, no matter where we're at when we talk to our local towns, our cities, our, people on an HOA or in our muni councils and start to talk more about, where are these chargers located? How do we access them? What does it look like? Are they affordable? And being equipped as EV drivers, because I think that as much as I love my job as policy lead right now, I can't fight the good fight for everybody. So I think making sure that everybody's equipped to be able to ask the right questions and be able to flag stuff and be like, hey, I don't think this is right is always really important for being able to prep members and make sure that they're prepared for the right conversations. So it's good that you're able to acknowledge and recognize that you're just like, I don't think that this is the way that this is supposed to be, that we're just supposed to accept this. I'm pretty sure that this is supposed to be laid out differently. So I'm glad you have like the peace of mind to understand that, the cognizance to recognize it.
The city council's utilities commission met last week, and more than half of it was devoted to EV charging. But at the same time, the people involved were like, the comments were so bizarre, both from the city council and the people who were talking about the EV charging. I was just kind of banging my head against the wall in the back. But I have fired off letters to my city council members, so we'll see.
All right. Do we have anybody else
Before we sign off,
Oh, go for
this
it.
is Patsy,
Hey,
and
Patsy.
I'm 15th EV show at the Farmers Community Market. And I would love for everyone to sign up your vehicle and come and tell your stories.
Can you give the date again? You cut out for a second.
It's September 14th, Sunday.
Okay.
Oh, it was the one that I had.
Yes, that was the second one you posted.
The one at Hunterdon.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna repeat this. So Patsy is asking everybody this EV show that's happening at the Hunterdon Community Farmers Market on Sunday, September the 14th, 9 a.m. to 12:45 p.m. at the Hunterdon Land Trust in Flemington. If we can get everybody to, be aware of it when this PowerPoint deck is live, and I drop the link for this and we send it all out. All of these are live links. So you can click on this, it'll take you right to the National Drive Electric Month website. You can sign up right then and there as a volunteer. Thanks for highlighting that, Patsy. We appreciate it.
And I also post it to the Facebook page with a live
Awesome.
link. And I'll keep on posting till everyone signs up.
Are you a captain for this?
I'm sorry?
Are you the captain for that event, or are you just participating?
Yes. I'm the captain for the event.
Awesome. So that if that's the case, then make sure that you stay in contact with everybody, so that way we can make sure that we put it in our newsletters. And then we can make sure that people know about it, and we'll just keep putting it in the newsletters at the bottom to remind people to sign up.
Thank you. That would be great. And this will
Awesome.
be the 3rd year that
Awesome.
we're holding it there. So Stan's going to co-captain with me, but if everyone else can come, that would be
Phenomenal.
great. And
love
you
to
can
see
also
it.
go shopping, buy your local vegetables.
All of your local goods. I'd love to see it. All right. I'm going to quickly go back to this other slide before we close out. Does anybody else have an interactive open floor item that they want to talk about any of these questions before I close it out and give our final notice, and then we can wrap it up? Does anybody else want to chat? I know we have a couple of lurkers in the participant list. That's okay. Not going to make you talk. I'm not a cruel teacher. Those days are behind me.
I would, go ahead.
No, I was noticing that Mario posted a calculator in the chat, and I have a soft spot because I built that calculator. He's like, "Is there an updated calculation to show, like a cost thing?" That EV calculator that Mario posted, would most likely just be fueling operations and maintenance, not what the cost of procurement for an electric vehicle is. It's unless they've updated it since. So it's not going to show exclusion of federal tax credits, but it does show cheaper operations and maintenance. So that's what that calculator is that Mario dropped, because I'm the one who built it back in 2017. The formulas are still good, I promise. The math still maths.
Can you hear? Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Anya, yeah, you just came up mute. What's up?
Cool. I was having trouble with my mic. Yeah, I put that question in the chat from your initial question about, concerns that people have. So I don't know if there's some kind of it might exist already, like a one-page graphic that kind of summarizes all of the information you might put into a calculator like that, for like an example car that you could just show someone when you're tabling, like, oh yeah, it actually
So
is.
have you looked at Plugstar?
Probably. I've looked at a lot of stuff lately.
It doesn't, yeah, it's more for the procurement side, I think if you combine that with this calculator, you could probably come up with some, because it does tell you all the incentives that things qualify for and what the typical price is and things like that, which is, and taxes and rebates and all that sort of thing, and
Yeah, it'll give you all of the
the
potential incentives
efficiency.
that are available, and also is pretty good about combining anything that's available from your local utility. Like if you purchase this charging station, then you'll get a make ready credit from your local utility for X amount of dollars. Like PSE&G offers $1,500 as part of an on-bill credit for installing an electric vehicle charger. And then if you go to Charge Up New Jersey, you'll get $500 for your actual charger itself. So you're telling me that my charger is essentially free, and then to install the dang thing, it's also basically free if I live in PS territory. Awesome. So I don't have to worry about all of that
Andy-
install.
Andy's
There's all
shaking
these
his head.
now add to it.
It's not 500 for the home EV charger. It's 250, one-time flat fee.
For the Charge of New Jersey one?
Yeah.
Oh, they dropped it.
Yes.
Quoting
Now,
old numbers.
I think the other thing, Anya, is that pretty much all the calculators that are available today are based on new vehicle purchase. However, I will tell you that really the numbers skyrocket when you buy pre-owned. Case in point, 2 days after Christmas, I purchased a 23 Chevy Bolt EV, 27,439 new in 23. Literally a year later, with 50,000 miles on it, and I paid 13,082 with taxes, title, the whole 9 yards, 14,638. What can you buy for 14,638 out the door? And in the calculator that I sent in the chat, I'm averaging 15 cents a mile in fuel cost savings, multiplied by 26,000 miles that I drove last year, $3,900 a year, $325 a month. That car is not only $0, it's negative dollars because my monthly payment with nothing down is well below 325. So that's the kind of number that really shocks people into, wow, what?
Right.
And it can be done.
So I guess my big question is, how do you communicate that with Ashley? I really appreciate your presentation about like not just spewing numbers, and how do you like very concisely say, actually, it will end up being cheaper. And I know it kind of depends if you're buying a new car, a used car, if you know.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most of the calculators available online are based on new car purchase with the different federal tax incentives, right? And for us, it was interesting because because it was a 23 model year, and we were looking at end of December 24, so the car would not be up to 2 model years old. At the last 2 days, in theory, we might have been able to take advantage of that $4,000 federal tax credit with used EVs. However, the constraints associated with that, with the income caps and all that other stuff, basically didn't make any sense for us. And I had a sinking feeling that come January 2, everybody's numbers are going to be inflated by $4,000 to reflect that adjustment. And that's exactly what happened, right? So that car today, which I paid $13,000, if you're lucky, you'll see it advertised today for $17,000. And most of the time, it'll be $17,000 with the $4,000 tax credit factored in. So it's, and to us, it was like done, right? But again, I think it does require a little bit of forethought. Actually, to go back to your statement earlier about underserved communities, like Trenton is down the street, literally 10 minutes from my house, right? One of the things that makes it difficult in the, underserved communities is simply the fact that it's very difficult to make the numbers pencil out. Yes, you can tell them that you could buy a used Nissan Leaf for under $10,000, buy a used Bolt for under $10,000. Great, right? But then they got to worry about how they're going to charge it. And even municipalities right now, Trenton does have public EV charging put in there by Green Spot, which I last year when they were a couple of years ago when they were doing the bid, right? But again, when you look at it, what's going to happen, and I think we're almost at the precipice to this, is that if we define the local underserved communities as being a micro region scenario, I'm just going to use the car to get me from my apartment to the grocery store to bring all the groceries back. If the roads are fairly low speed, not highway miles, then there's a solution to that, which is low speed vehicles. That will then bring the cost of the vehicle down to under $20,000 and will make charging very, very reasonable. And that might, if somebody's willing to step up to the plate and actually do like a car share service, like a Zip car for that kind of community. That's actually the model that I'm trying to figure out right now.
These are all really great things to talk about. And I think in a future meeting, because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're like 10 minutes over. So I don't want to push the meeting for anybody that does need to potentially drop. So I'll keep entertaining the conversation for a little bit because this is a really great topic. But 100%. I think that this is something we should be talking about. And for anybody that doesn't know, as part of my day job, when I work for like the Smart Electric Power Alliance, I'm in charge of a community of practice that includes over 30 different utilities across the country right now, specifically talking about that problem, which is equitable access to electric vehicles and affordable charging in underserved and disadvantaged communities, specifically looking at that issue and whether or not they can offer discount programs, charge cards, or other types of programs to specific customers and figure out how to reach those people. And I'm in charge of that whole entire initiative with my organization. So I mean, we're talking about this really critical thing of like, how do we reach certain people when we tell our EV story? Are we being disingenuous with saying, yeah, you can afford an EV, but how do they charge it? Where do they park it? Most folks that live in an underserved community or disadvantaged area are generally people that live in a multi-unit dwelling. They're living in an apartment, and that charging is not accessible. It's also not cheap when they have public charging. And it's not great if you have to park your car and then walk 7 blocks to get home and then go and pick it up in the middle of the night and then unplug it and get it back and then try to find a parking spot. That's not a reasonable solution. So trying to figure out these different pathways from both us being able to advocate as an organization, but also talking to the people that work and live in that community and listening to their stories is super critical. And I think the more we talk to them, the more that we do ride and drives, and also just get them used to butts and seats and make them realize that we can potentially have them just get interactions with electric vehicles before maybe a year or two from now, more credible solutions are available, like what Andy's talking about. And from what other programs, maybe PS or ACE put into practice, we might start to, move the needle a little bit more in these communities, but we can't just go from a cold start. We got to start building these relationships with these folks by going into their communities and doing ride and drives and EV shows now, so that way that we can build up the market for tomorrow. And I think this is a really critical conversation we got to keep up with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't know if anybody is familiar with NJDEP's e-mobility program, but it's addressing all of those issues you brought up. And so I work for Cross County Connection. So we just got a planning grant for South Jersey to look into that. So these are some of the types of solutions that we
Awesome.
investigating. So I would love to talk more about it with all of you.
Yeah, please stay in contact with us, because if you guys are already
Actually, do you have an email? I'd love to follow up with you.
Yeah, I will drop my email in the chat.
Patrick has all of our
I
emails.
assume you have an email, but I'd be willing to share your
Patrick
email.
has all of our emails on you. He'll be more than happy to connect you to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And
And when in
Anya,
doubt, you can also just email the New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association directly as well and just CC me on it. So that way I know that I get it, because that email isn't something that all of us get. It goes to the primary folks who are on it, like our president and our secretary. And as policy lead, I don't see all of it. So feel free to just CC me whenever you send something over to us and we can coordinate. Because I think talking about, how do we have better conversations? How do we do EV shows and ride and drives in critical communities? How do we make sure we partner with other organizations to put on better shows and reach better communities and have conversations and put the information out there, like you were saying, in a layman's terms, palatable way that says, this is a Toyota Corolla, this is a Nissan Leaf. And like, which car is like the everyman's car that we're talking about? Like, do we talk about a Chevy Bolt? Do we talk about a Nissan Leaf? Because not everybody's going to buy a Lucid. And that's the reality. And we want people to buy whatever vehicle is accessible and affordable to them. We want to make sure that we can make these equivocations and say, if you're buying luxury line, you're here. If you're buying affordable, you're here. And that's good.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I definitely would be interested in assisting with an event in South Jersey. And like you were saying, we have a lot of transit deserts, Camden, and then the more rural areas.
Yes.
So yeah, would love to look into that. I can't like promise anything right now. We're kind of figuring out like what our capacity is going to be. But yeah, we have staff time for electric vehicle work. So
we'll think about it moving towards September, because I definitely think that we're going to be more active for that September 12th to October 12th timeline. So for sure, we can be in coordination and we can see what comes out of it. That'll be great. Awesome. Well, with that, we're at 8:31. I don't want to have anybody hang on too much longer. I love how we've had such a great conversation today. Our next NJEVA meeting, I'm very pleased to say, will be in person and not online. You'll be able to see each other, have beverages, Somebody had the idea of doing mocktails. I'm all for that. And if I can get my father's really nice Margaritaville like blender that he has and run that off the back of my vehicle, heck yeah, I will. I'll make you all mocktails for my EV6 trunk. 100% I will. Would love to see you all. Again, location is to be determined. I just need to go and do one more physical site visit because I'm trying to find a spot that's got ample shade. Because boy, do I not want us to cook, even though it is a cookout. We want the food to cook, not us. So on that note, stay tuned on that location, and I'll make sure that everybody is aware of where we're going to be. And you'll be getting a newsletter about that location. But otherwise, I hope everybody has a wonderful night. Thank you so much for joining us for the July 2025 meeting, and I hope you have a great evening. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Jeff.
So long. Great meeting.
Thancare.
Thank you.
Talk to you guys later.
Bye.